He has been such a supportive leader for Lung Cancer Initiative, a member of our scientific advisory committee, and someone who's really helped guide our efforts as an organization as we have grown. And we're just so appreciative to Dr. Walker for all of his support. And so I'm so excited to bring him up here and let him kick off our program for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the one thing that's certain is everybody in this room is well aware of lung cancer, that it's the #1 cause of cancer death, men and women. There's more lung cancer deaths than breast, prostate, colorectal combined. And as 438 Americans die every day from lung cancer. Every day. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The Lung Cancer Initiative of North Carolina, my wife and I financially support, and we will continue to support, because they are truly committed to the awareness, education, access, and research. And every dollar that goes to them is put back into one of those avenues. A big battle of lung cancer is just the stigma with lung cancer. Because there's the blame, the shame, and then people don't get care. There's a lot of nihilism. So just the awareness is vitally important. The education so that everybody is aware. The research is vitally important. And there's been tremendous advances. And if there's probably the most impactful advance is in lung cancer screening. Now, most people don't get lung cancer screening. But if you look at what mammograms can do for breast cancer screening, it can reduce mortality of breast cancer by 20%. Just recently presented at the International Association Study of Lung Cancer, that women that get lung cancer screening, it reduces mortality by 61%. 3 times more effective than mammograms, than colonoscopies. But yet, most people don't get lung cancer screening. And just the very fact of getting lung cancer screening, of the 168,000 deaths in the country every year from lung cancer, if everybody got lung cancer screening, that would fall by over half, which would be cut in half to 438 to 219 people dying every day, which is a tremendous advance. That's the biggest advance. The second is the immune therapy, which has just exploded in lung cancer that we now use, not just in advance, but we're using it earlier and earlier and earlier. And just had somebody in clinic that just left, and I have to go back, that had an unresectable, it was stage 1, but it was unresectable. She had radiation therapy, but had immune therapy into that. Her PET's completely negative on things. So immune therapy is allowing us to see things that we never saw before. Liquid biopsies are a way we're able to get more information just from a simple blood test. The research is the foundation of every advance in cancer. Dr. Nagash is he's our senior research fellow in our fellowship program. He's committed to the research in lung cancer. He was a recipient of one of the Lung Cancer Initiative grants. And the Lung Cancer Initiative, there's 5 fellowship programs in the state. Us, Wake Forest, UNC, Duke, and the Carolinas. And every year they give $25,000 to a fellow from each institution, every year. And just recently, another $100,000. They were partnered with Coach V 2 years ago so that the dollars could go out. And our institution has received 4 of these, and we'll have the 5th one after the meeting on Tuesday. So every dollar Lung Cancer Initiative goes into either education, access, awareness, and research. Dr. Nagash is finishing up his fellowship. He will be at the NCI for a year studying immune therapy, and my hope is that he will be able to come back here and be part of our thoracic oncology program of lung cancer research. His whole focus is on KRAS lung cancer, which is the most frequent mutated lung cancer, but there's no way to target that. And he's partnered with multiple institutions. He's looking at immune therapies. He's looking at ways to identify each compartment, and his seminal work is identifies the immune therapy. We know each compartment of the body will have a different immune makeup, so therefore you have to treat things not uniformly but individually on things. So Dr. Gosh will give some update on his research, and he's going to be a superstar. I will say that to everybody and predict that right now. Rafi will be a superstar. This will be followed by Pamela Pear, who's part of our faculty here, talking about integrative medicine, which is still just 2 days ago, 3 days ago, there was a study on depression and the outcome of prostate cancer. Depression accelerates the growth of cancer, lowers outcome. So it's those types of things that we think maybe are not as important become vitally important, because everything we do, simple exercise reduces lung cancer, decreases the gene makeup so that it can control the cancer better. So it's not really integrative medicine, it's really targeting the whole person and not just the cancer, not just the scan and that treatment, but bringing in a person's entire body to fight the cancer so that everybody with lung cancer can live as long as they possibly can and as well. And that's the goal with every room you go into. Live long and live well. We'll turn things over to Dr. Nagash on the research.
Thanks, Dr. Walker. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As Dr. Walker said, I'm a third-year fellow in the oncology program here, and I have some specific research interests that the program has allowed me to work on in different ways, and especially the lung cancer initiative that has provided funding for some of that research. So thank you, everybody who's contributed to that. Your time, your money, anything that you've done is put to extremely useful aspects of research. A bit about myself. I grew up in a place called Kashmir in northern India. I don't know if you've heard about Kashmir. It's a politically disputed area. And then I did my medical school there, and then did residency up in upstate New York in Buffalo, University of Buffalo. And I've been here in the last 3 years completing my fellowship. And I'm hoping to go to Bethesda, Maryland later in July this year. So I was told to make this simple. I made it very complicated, obviously, so that all of you are immunologists by the end of this talk. I'm kidding. But hopefully you'll get an understanding of what we have done in the past several months. And I've tried to make it easy so that all of us are on the same page by the end of this. All right, so what does the immune system do? The immune system does a lot of things that we usually do not know about in our day-to-day lives. It fights viruses, it fights bacteria, and it also fights certain other cancerous cells that people have normally that the immune system detects and kills. And those cancerous cells don't end up forming that huge cancerous masses like any other individual who presents with localized or metastatic cancer. So the immune system is always functioning, it's always killing, it's always detecting. So the way the immune system detects the tumor is, imagine you have a tumor with certain flags, and these are the flags that the immune system recognizes. It picks up on these flags because these flags are foreign, and then it detects the tumor cell. But the tumors are smart, and if somebody, I know some of you, and I've talked to some of you in the clinics, and the analogy I use is the immune system is smart, but the cancer can be smarter because it has ways to bypass the immune system. And how does it do that? It builds up certain guards. The tumor builds up certain guards that prevent the immune system from attacking the tumor. And the way I've shown these guards is Queen Elizabeth's guards, interestingly. And this prevents the T cell from attacking the tumor. And these guards we're going to label as PDL1, programmed cell death ligand 1 is the full form. But as we have evolved in the treatment landscape for different cancers, we've seen different advances, and I would say immunotherapy is one of the most recent advances in the last 5 years that's led to a paradigm shift in the treatment of several cancers. And I've shown that here chemotherapy, targeted therapy, and then immunotherapy, which is where we are at this point. So just a bit of science behind this madness. The immune system, as I said, you have the PD-L1, which is the guard on the tumor cell that binds to the PD-1 on the T cell, and it's a negative signal. It prevents the T cell from attacking. T cell is your lymphocyte. It's part of your immune system. Prevents the cell from attacking the tumor. When you have the immune therapy, you block this interaction in different ways that allows the T cell to attack the tumor. So you're stopping the stop signal, basically. You're inhibiting the inhibitor that allows the T cell to kill the tumor, seek the tumor. So imagine if you're at a traffic light, and this is your normal immune system, and the red traffic light is your PD-L1 that's stopping the car, which is the T cell, from crossing the interaction. You block the red signal using the antibodies, the immunotherapy, and what you get is the T cell that attacks the tumor. That's the easiest and the simplest way to understand it. And there's been several trials in the last 3-4 years. Some of the agents that you might have heard of on the TV, Keytruda, Opdivo, that are used for lung cancer specifically, have shown significant improvements in survival. Survival is what we want. The durability in survival is what we aim for. The longer the flatness of the curve that you see on the top here, and the greater the difference between the curves, the better the therapy. That's what's shown here in this hypothetical slide. So we're going from chemotherapy all the way up to combination immunotherapies, trying to make them trying to make the survival longer and helping the patients to achieve durable control of the disease. And that's what we aim for with immunotherapy. But unfortunately, immunotherapy does not work in everybody. We come across these scenarios day to day in our clinics. We have great examples, but then we have not so great examples where you have an individual who has metastatic cancer or even localized cancer, gets immunotherapy, and unfortunately the immunotherapy does not do much for that individual. Why is that? Why doesn't immunotherapy work well in everybody? Well, because there are some other bad players that the tumor uses to protect itself. Some of the bad players that the tumor unfortunately uses to protect itself, I have shown right here. So that's to protect the tumor from, unfortunately I could not make this less politically directed. But these bad players prevent the tumor from working, protect the tumor from being sought by the immune system, form this abnormal layer, or help the tumor in evading the immune system. And those are some of the different cells, different mechanisms, which we won't go into detail. But basically, apart from those guards that I showed you earlier, there are other agents that prevent the T cell from attacking the tumor. So that was it for our project. We wanted to look at one of those bad players, and adenosine, with its receptor called A2A, has been recently shown to be one of those bad players in the immune microenvironment. So in the tumor microenvironment, the tumor has certain other cells, certain other structures around it. We call it the microenvironment of the tumor. And adenosine has been shown to be one of those players that impedes the action of the T cell. So as I've shown here in the diagram in the cartoon, certain receptors called CD39 and CD73 that convert ATP, which you might have heard of, adenosine triphosphate, something provides energy to the body, into AMP and then adenosine, these red little dots here that act on the T cell and prevent the T cell from acting. So this is one of the mechanisms that the T cell may not function properly, despite having immunotherapy on board. So the aim of the title of our project was to study the role of adenosine and its receptor, the A2A, in modulating the immune response in non-small cell lung cancer patients who were treated with immunotherapy. So this was not a bench research. This was actual patients who would get standard of care treatment with immunotherapy, and we would do certain other assessments in those patients to look at those adenosine levels and the receptor and see how that would change. And some of the authors here mentioned are sitting at the back who helped me with the study. The rationale was that, as I said, immunotherapy does not work well with everybody. There's likely other secondary mechanisms that prevent the immunotherapy from working. And we hypothesized that adenosine via the A2A was probably one of those mechanisms that would prevent these patients, the immunotherapy from working. So as Dr. Walker said, Lung Cancer Initiative provides us with $25,000. So far we have $14,000 left. What did we do with the money? Hopefully not that. What we did do was we took these patients. That was phase 1 of the study. Got their blood at baseline, and with each cycle of immunotherapy, some immunotherapies are every 2 weeks, some are every 3 weeks, some are every 4 weeks. But all in all, we wanted approximately 8 to 9 time points during the treatment course of these patients. We collected blood, which was processed, converted to plasma in one of our labs with Dr. Yang, and then we assessed certain other molecular alterations in the A2A receptor and some cytokines, which are inflammatory, pro-inflammatory mediators or anti-inflammatory mediators, to see what was going on with these patients. The phase 2 of the study, part 2, which has not been started yet, was to collect tissue samples, which is much more complicated to get because those tissue samples have been banked in the pathology section. They might need that for some other purposes, so that's why we've not been able to complete that part yet, but we're working on that. And the goal was to analyze those receptors that I said convert the ATP into the adenosine, the CD39 and CD73. Because if you have these receptors, that means you might have more adenosine in the tumor, so that's why we want to assess these receptors. As I said, this was not a bench study, but an actual patient-driven study. Believe it or not, it's harder to recruit patients than mice. But we had 20 patients enrolled in the study. Phase 1, as I said, is completed with some data interpretation pending. Phase 2 is likely to start in July 2019. What did we do with the samples? Most of our assessments were based on this study called ELISA. That's where all the money went to get these nice, beautiful kits. And what ELISA does in a simple way is if you have an antigen that's found on the surface of these wells, you add on certain antibodies and those antibodies react in different ways. The reaction is picked up by an analyzer and you get a reading for the level of that antigen. So as I said, we had 20 patients, A to T, and unfortunately I wanted to show this because we talk about immunotherapy, as I said, but most of these patients unfortunately passed away. Not all of them ended up completing the studies. So again, the sad part of immunotherapy doesn't work well for everybody. Only a bunch of these, the purple lines, completed, but even some of those passed away later on. Some of the discontinuations were based on patients having adverse events before completion of the study, due to which you take the patient off. As you know, immunotherapy is not without side effects. It has its own list of issues. Hyperactivation of your own immune system that acts against your body leads to arthritis, pneumonitis, inflammation of your lung, inflammation of your skin, etc., etc. But we did have all these patients enrolled. Unfortunately, most of them passed away. Some completed the study, but nevertheless, we had a decent number of samples that we could collect. This is one of the limitations of doing an individual-based study rather than mice. Because mice, if they don't complete that study, you sack them, you basically get their blood, and if that doesn't work, you choose a different batch of mice. With individuals, we can't do that. So we have to we have to account for each and every blood sample that we take, because we have taken consent for that. So every blood sample matters, every patient matters. So I'm just going to show some graphs here that may not make a huge deal of sense right now, but these are just some trends. As I said, the data interpretation is pending, meaning that we have not correlated some of the molecular data with the clinical data because it was very difficult and time-consuming to get the molecular data in the first place. The second aspect of it, meaning correlation of these changes in certain levels with patient survival, with responses. It's not that difficult of a thing, so we will be doing that soon. But this is just some levels that we see for CD73 in the blood. Total number of 9 cycles, and not many patients completed those 9 cycles, as I said, because they either passed away or had adverse events because of that. And again, CD39, these are just some bars that we see. We have to correlate them with trends. But what I did observe is, if you remember the earlier chart where I showed you have some purple lines with patients completing many treatments. And interestingly, some of those patients that completed treatments were patient C, patient J, patient M, and patient N. You notice how those levels are low in those patients compared to many others. And A2A, as I said, acts via adenosine. Adenosine acts as a negative regulator. So possibly, if you have lower levels of these, you might do better with immunotherapy. But we'll need more patients, obviously, to get to that conclusion. 20 patients is not enough to get to a conclusion. It's an observation. And observations are not enough to formally conclude that, yes, this is true. We can take it to the next level by incorporating more patients and obviously getting some other analyses done. And interleukin-6, that's one of our favorite cytokines. Cytokines are different chemical substances in the body that cause either inflammation or inhibit inflammation. And interleukin-6 is one of those cytokines that is pro-inflammatory, meaning if somebody has an inflamed state, your interleukin-6 levels are going to be good. Your interleukin-6 levels are going to be high. And we've shown in some other studies that patients that have had higher interleukin-6 levels have a higher tendency of adverse events with immunotherapy. So if your baseline inflammation is high, you're adding immunotherapy, your level of inflammation is probably going to be higher, and that's going to cause more problems for the body. But again, interleukin-6 levels are lower for patient C, patient J, patient M, and patient N, in fact, did not have 0 levels. So possibly lesser inflammation may be a good thing too. That's one of our other observations that we were able to get to. We did not check for adenosine levels specifically, as I showed you the red dots earlier, which was adenosine acting via the A2A. The reason was because adenosine is not stable in the body, so if you collected blood samples, it's not going to last long. You need to prevent the adenosine from breaking down in the blood sample, and because that was not done in the initial blood sample, so we tried not to add adenosine to our overall assessment because the analysis for getting that done was complicated. The kind of processing, the kind of experiments that you need were a bit too complicated, so we kind of left that out. But importance of this study, so that's where we are at right now. Importance, as I said earlier, this is patient-driven, so it has translational relevance. These are blood samples from the patients, not mice. So this tells us what's actually happening in an individual rather than an animal model, and then thinking if that's going to happen in a human being. So we are not extrapolating. This is actually what's going on, and this is what we're observing. And we're trying to understand, obviously, some novel pathways. This is not well studied. There is a small molecule inhibitor of adenosine that has come up in the last 1 or 2 years. It's not made it into the market yet. There's some early trials that they're trying to do, but nobody's looking at how that pathway is affected when patients are getting immunotherapy. So that was it for me. I would like to thank the Lung Cancer Initiative, obviously, Mona and Justin, who are sitting at the back, who helped me with this, and Dr. Walker back in the day. And Dr. Yang when he was into Chinese soccer. And obviously, somebody who helped me with this, my 5-month-old daughter.
That question, because I'm very focused on the patient. The disease is very important because conventional therapies require appropriate staging and diagnosis. But many times we treat patients exactly the same way, and the outcomes are variable. So my effort is to show that a program that includes conventional treatments along with a patient focus has the potential of doing even better in terms of length of time that patients respond to therapy and even the depth of their treatments. So the goal always is triumphant living beyond the diagnosis of cancer. So conventional and complementary therapy. Conventional therapy is the treatments that are frequently given for that are always considered for the treatment of cancer. And those therapies are, after a diagnosis, are chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. And in an effort to improve long-term outcomes, we will give supportive care. But there is a difference in a program that focuses on complementary therapy and those who just focus on supportive care. And the difference is the entire patient. Thinking about lifestyles, family support and friend support, remembering nutritional needs, whether or not the patients who are capable and able to exercise. These are all differences among people that impact on resiliency, on strength, on ability to adhere, and ability to complete therapy. And this is an emerging field. One of the reasons it's emerging is because this is the 1800s concept of medicine. They had very little direct disease-focused care. The remedies were used over and over. The same diseases received very similar therapies. But the relationship between the physician and the patient had a strength and a passion and a dedication and a commitment. The light is burning because it's getting to be evening or night, yet here is the physician at the bedside. The physician never takes his eyes from the patient, unlike what we see in today's model, where there's an interface of the computer and an interface of a lot of laboratory data, and sometimes the patient as a whole is lost in the technology. This is a very recent book Robert Wachter wrote. It made the New York Times bestseller because it's a very real phenomenon. As we enter into our practices now, many times I spend so much time at my computer, I see my patient from my peripheral vision, and I no longer get the innuendos and the nuances of communication. And in there lies a great deal of the potential success in tailoring my treatment approaches. Sharing the same goals is where it starts. The comparison between conventional and complementary therapy is that they are both evidence-based and evidence-driven. They both place safety as a priority, and they're both goal-driven. The difference is that one, conventional therapy, is very disease-focused, and our complementary therapies have to be evidence-based, an effort to obtain prospective evidence, like Dr. Nakwash was pointing out, and have to be shown to be efficacious and safe. And we're still in a pattern of emerging data to support the use of specific disciplines within complementary therapy. And I do want to point out that just because treatments are said to be natural does not mean that they're safe. And so natural products such as herbs and vitamins and minerals and probiotics are getting to be very popular now. Ginseng is one which we often think doesn't have very much in the way of toxicity, but it is a powerful biological agent, depending on the plant from which it's obtained, does have anticoagulant effects, and there can be risk to a patient who may already have a risk for bleeding tendencies or be on anticoagulation. So fundamental to the start of any biological product is good communication with the physician and close monitoring. Some of the mind-body practices, and we have many of them are here available for the use of our patients and even their caregivers through our research center, are yoga, meditation, prayer, and acupuncture is available here, Tai Chi, massage therapy, breathing exercises, and even some of these other things such as spinal manipulation. These also are not always completely safe. And so once again, it comes down to communication. We have to know the patient and formulate an interdisciplinary plan that would have the least amount of risk and optimize the goals of our care. And communication is where this all starts. And then many of these treatments that we're beginning to see now as important in healthcare are thousands of years old, certainly more than 1,000. And they really do emanate from the Asian countries with the use of both Chinese and other Asian remedies, as well as through very ancient Indian medicine, with the use of yoga and the choice of different herbs and the choice of different foods. And underlying it all is the need for us to recognize the potential of combining the linker between our diagnosis and our patient-centered approach has to be evidence-based and safe, and it's called integrative oncology. And there are several, in fact, probably 7 or 8, I chose the top 3 evidence-based societies that are within the United States that are studying the benefits of adding integrative oncology to cancer care. The National Center for Complementary Integrative Health is on our cancerclinicaltrials.gov website, and I think I have a slide that talks about 9 different trials, which we are looking at now in a prospective fashion, stratified for important clinical variables, in order to get some results that by scientific method that are meaningful in the field of massage, diet, acupuncture, and the bodily therapies with the same conventional therapy given to all patients, but which as a control. It's very important to have a control arm, and then the experimental arm is the addition of some of these other lifestyle changes. So natural does not always mean safe. Evidence-based, patient-centered, with appropriate monitoring are essential elements of medical practice by both complementary as well as conventional healthcare. And to choose integrative modalities with the treatment team, a team leader who's going to be responsible and accountable for making sure everybody's working together for efficacy. So integrative medicine is, and I apologize for the slide, the formatting I suspect is different between my own computer and this. But what this says is alternative medicine, complementary medicine, and integrative medicine. I wanted to point out that alternative medicine is when people actually avoid conventional treatment and they just receive alternative care. That's extremely dangerous. We know with large numbers of patients that have been studied and analyzed, their outcomes are worse because of treatment delays, diagnosis delays, and because their performance status steadily declines without effective therapy. Complementary therapy is a linker between conventional treatment for cancer, radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery, and integrative care, the blue chart that I had just mentioned, many of which we have here. And integrative therapy is a means of using this together in a deliberate manner. It's personalized, it's goal-driven, it's evidence-based, and we keep looking at safety. So what is the frequency of use of complementary therapies among cancer patients? Well, one of the largest integrative medical practices is at MD Anderson, and they reviewed the type of complementary therapy. CAM stands for complementary and alternative therapy, but this focus has to be on complementary treatment. And the ones that are discussed and not discussed with the patients, between the patients and their physicians, tend to be the lifestyle practices of patients. And I think that while it's maybe completely safe perhaps not to talk about prayer and spiritual practice, it also may be that these lifestyle changes, when they're absent, may result in a patient with more difficulty with their focus, more difficulty with handling anxiety or the ups and downs, the true roller coaster, which is part of cancer care. So I think that there is reason to begin to study the outcomes of patients who use and don't use these alternative remedies. But why are people using alternative therapies in combination with their conventional treatment? And many times, this is a little boy who's about to get an injection, and of course he has a great deal of fear and anxiety about the shot, and he's trying to tell his doctor he really would prefer to have an alternate therapy, alternative treatment. And many times it's fear that kind of drives that. Or, maybe there's an inner belief that if only he ate his spinach and broccoli more, he wouldn't need these shots. The most important thing is that we're patient-centered, that we understand why a patient accepts or refuses, is adherent or is non-adherent with treatment recommendations. Because as a physician, as I understand that, then I may be able to give them insights and understanding by which they will become more adherent, by which they will develop more confidence and have better outcomes. So, this is a picture that's taken from a patient educational piece out of the Journal of the American Medical Association. And on the right side of the picture, a woman is actively receiving conventional treatment. And in the same pose, she is in a completely relaxed and seemingly healthy mind frame, as well as physical state. When you look at her, you can see that she's not malnourished, she's not dehydrated, and has a great deal of peace. And that's what we want to accomplish. At the same time as patients are receiving conventional treatments, yes, she has side effects, apparently alopecia, and perhaps other side effects, but at the same time, she has poise, she is focused, she is centeredness. And in the process of accomplishing this, patients will have better adherence to therapies. So this is the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health. The emphasis on this is to combine the academic medical centers, such as George Washington University, UCLA, MD Anderson, Hopkins, and other major academic centers, in an effort to place emphasis on tailoring treatment for the whole person, to look at safety and efficacy on combining these alternative, these complementing medical practices, and all members are certified healthcare providers working to improve patient outcomes for patients with malignancies. So at Guided Medical Center, we have an emerging integrative oncology program, and this calendar represents something that we have a program for every day of the work week. Patients can participate in small group exercise, meditation and yoga, Tai Chi, and in the process of doing this, we intend to show that the outcomes are closer communication with providers, better adherence to therapy, more resiliency with the ups and downs and toxicity of treatment, and ultimately, our ultimate outcome is that patients will have more disease control for a longer period of time. And we're in the process of acquiring that data. We have programs that are the animal therapy and pet therapy driven means of anxiety and effort to diminish anxieties and also to include people in life. So many times when patients get a diagnosis, they have a tendency to feel like they are all of a sudden on the outside, looking in at other people with active lives, but trying to keep people active, keep them involved, and keep them healthy mentally and spiritually. So the National Center for the Complementary Health Integrative Society has currently these 6 active protocols, such as to improve the health and well-being with patients with cancer. These are randomized and they're prospective, looking at symptom management of hot flashes for patients and men on anti-hormonal therapy for malignancy, programs to support exercise and overall health, hypnosis for patients who have toxicities related to hot flashes, and yoga therapies. That's what I have. Thank you for questions.